Welcome to the AMSM channel. This content is prepared under the supervision of Arvin. You know, usually when we think about our dreams, or I guess especially our nightmares, we think of them as these deeply private spaces.
Absolutely. The most intimate spaces imaginable.
Right. You fall asleep, your eyes close, and you just sort of retreat into this world that is exclusively yours. It's like a closed loop.
Built entirely from your own memories. Yeah.
Exactly. Your personal fears, your specific daily life. But I want you to imagine something for a second. Think about the last really unsettling nightmare you had.
Oh, we've all had those.
Yeah, you know the ones. Maybe it was that classic one where you're trapped in an endless loop, just wandering through a building where the doors keep leading back to the same hallway.
Or the paralysis one.
Yes, where you are completely paralyzed, desperately trying to communicate with someone who just, isn't hearing you. Now, what if I told you that the walls of your mind in that moment weren't actually walls at all?
That's the terrifying part, really.
It is. What if that exact nightmare, that endless loop, the silent screaming, was being experienced by millions of other people across the globe at the exact same moment?
It's just wild to think about.
People you have never met, people you will literally never know, all sharing your private terror.
I mean, it completely upends our entire concept of individual consciousness.
Right.
If that boundary has fallen, we're no longer singular, isolated minds when we sleep. We're looking at the birth of a shared, network-driven unconscious.
Which sounds like sci-fi, but it's real.
It is real. And I have to say, analyzing this shift is simultaneously one of the most fascinating and frankly deeply terrifying developments in the history of human psychology.
Which brings us to the actual blueprint of this phenomenon. Today, we're going on a deep dive into this extraordinary set of source materials, specifically excerpts from a text known as the Manifesto of the Internet's Unconscious Psychology.
It's a heavy text, but so important.
It really is. And our mission today isn't just to talk about, abstract theories. We are going to guide you step by step into the architecture of your own modern mind.
Step by step.
We're going to figure out exactly why your brain feels so unbelievably exhausted by 2 p.m. every day.
Oh, everyone feels that.
Everyone. And why we all suddenly have this weird magnetic attraction to creepy, empty digital spaces.
Yes, the liminal spaces.
We'll get into that. And most importantly, how the algorithms running quietly in the background of your devices are actively writing the script for your nightly dreams. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because to even begin to understand how our nightmares became a shared network, we first have to look at the waking nightmare of our daily data consumption. I mean, I think we need to start with the sheer math of what our brains are doing right now.
The math is exactly where this begins. Because the psychological phenomena we are seeing, the shared dreams, the collective anxiety, none of this is happening in a vacuum.
Right, it doesn't just come out of nowhere.
No, it is downstream of a severe underlying biological crisis. The manifesto frames this as the crisis of the hyper-connected mind.
The hyper-connected mind.
Yes. The core argument is that in our advanced hyper-digital societies, the human psychological structure is undergoing an evolutionary rupture.
A rupture, not just a shift.
A literal rupture. Because unlike normal evolution, which, relies on slow, gradual genetic mutation over hundreds of thousands of years.
Right, slow way.
Yeah, the normal way. This rupture is happening in real time. It is happening to you right now. It is a direct, violent product of our ancient nervous system, constantly colliding with an aggressively engineered information ecosystem.
And the numbers the source provides to illustrate this collision really put it into perspective. I mean, it fundamentally changed how I view my own exhaustion.
The numbers are staggering.
They really are. Let's rewind the clock just a little bit. Think back to 1990.
Which wasn't that long ago.
Historically speaking, 1990 is a rounding error. It was yesterday. Back then, an average human being made roughly 3,000 conscious and unconscious micro-decisions every single day.
3,000.
Yeah, 3,000. And that covers your whole day. Deciding to put on a blue shirt instead of a white one. Deciding to step over a puddle on the sidewalk. Choosing what to make for dinner.
Basic daily functioning.
Exactly. Now, fast forward to today, living inside the modern attention economy, that number hasn't just doubled or tripled.
Not even close.
It has skyrocketed to over 35,000 micro-decisions daily.
It's hard to even process that jump.
I know. We are facing a volume of data that is 340 times greater than it was just 3 decades ago.
To really grasp the weight of that, we need to dissect what a micro decision actually looks like in a digital context.
Because it's not like we're choosing 35,000 pairs of pants.
Right. We aren't talking about pondering a career change 35,000 times a day. We're talking about the invisible load on your cognitive processing. Let's say you just pick up your phone to check the weather.
Simple enough.
It seems simple. But in the 3 seconds it takes to unlock the screen, your brain has to decide whether to process or ignore a banner ad for shoes.
That's one.
It has to evaluate a badge notification on your email app, is that from my boss, or a newsletter.
2.
It registers a text preview from a friend, a news alert about a global crisis, and a reminder to drink water.
Wow.
Each of those visual cues demands a split-second cognitive evaluation. Do I care about this? Is this a threat? Do I need to act? That is 5 decisions made in 3 seconds, and you haven't even seen the weather yet.
And you multiply that by the entire day. I'm trying to picture the biological hardware trying to run this software, because our mammalian brain evolved over millions of years to interpret natural environments, right?
It's built for the physical world.
It is spectacular at tracking like the rustle of leaves to spot a predator or recognizing subtle shifts in the weather. But forcing that exact same organic hardware to process 35,000 digital micro decisions a day? I was trying to think of a way to visualize this.
It's tough to visualize.
It is. It's not just like drinking from a fire hose. It's more like your working memory is a small restaurant kitchen.
Oh, I like this analogy.
Right. You have 3 stovetops and a couple of chefs. That's your biological capacity. But the algorithms are the waitstaff, and they are suddenly bringing in 35,000 complex orders every single hour.
The kitchen would just collapse.
Completely. The kitchen doesn't just get a little slow, the chefs panic, the stovetops overload, and the entire kitchen catches on fire.
That kitchen fire is the perfect way to visualize the mechanical failure taking place in the brain. The text defines this state as cognitive overload.
Cognitive overload.
Yes. And it targets a very specific cognitive function, which you mentioned, working memory. Your working memory is essentially your brain's scratch pad.
Like temporary storage.
Exactly. It's the highly volatile space where you hold information just long enough to manipulate it, like remembering a phone number while you type it in.
Right, right.
It is incredibly powerful, but its capacity is strictly biologically limited. When you force it to process a 340-fold increase in data, it simply overflows.
The chefs walk out.
The chefs walk out. And here is where the biology gets genuinely alarming. The manifesto highlights that under this continuous overflow, the brain literally begins to lose its neuroplasticity.
Wait, hold on. Let me make sure I'm getting this. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to adapt, form new connections, and learn, right?
That's correct.
How does having too many tabs open in my mental browser cause me to actually lose that structural ability? That seems extreme.
It sounds extreme, but it comes down to the chemical environment of an overloaded brain. When your working memory is constantly failing to keep up with the data influx when the kitchen is on fire, your brain interprets this overwhelming demand as a state of distress.
It thinks you're in danger.
Yes, it starts pumping out stress hormones. Over time, a brain bathing in chronic stress hormones actually prunes back its synaptic connections.
It shrinks.
The neural pathways become rigid. The brain physically defends itself by becoming less open to new information. This loss of neuroplasticity is the biological mechanism behind the symptoms. The text outlines severe brain fog, decision fatigue, and complete cognitive paralysis.
Oh man, that makes so much sense. I always thought decision fatigue was just like a lack of willpower.
A lot of people think that.
Like when you scroll through a streaming service for 45 minutes on a Tuesday night, adding things to a watch list, but you feel completely paralyzed and end up just turning the TV off. I always blame myself for that.
It's not a personal failure.
But you're saying that's not a personality quirk? That is my working memory, my kitchen actively failing.
Exactly. Your cognitive architecture is essentially short-circuiting. It physically cannot synthesize one more piece of information. The menu is too large, and the chefs have walked out.
Wow. Okay, so our working memory is overflowing, our neural pathways are getting rigid, and we are all basically walking around mentally tapped out.
Constantly tapped out.
But the text goes deeper than just feeling tired. It makes a very strong argument that this hypervigilance is causing actual physiological damage.
What's fascinating here is how the source material breaks down the metabolic cost of focus. It introduces a vital concept called directed attention.
Directed attention. Okay, break that down for us.
Think about navigating a modern digital environment. It is filled with constant interruptions, flashing notifications, and high-stakes crisis news.
Oh, yeah, just looking at a screen is chaotic.
Right. To get anything done, to write an email, to read a book, to listen to a conversation, your brain has to work incredibly hard to suppress all those distractions and focus on one specific task.
So it's actively blocking things out.
Exactly. That active, forceful filtering process is directed attention.
And I imagine that filtering process takes a massive toll on the prefrontal cortex, because that's the CEO of the brain, right?
That's a great way to put it, yes.
The part right behind our forehead that handles the heavy lifting like impulse control and complex planning.
It is the most metabolically demanding area of the human brain. Directed attention requires enormous amounts of glucose and energy to sustain.
So it's literally burning calories just trying to ignore a notification.
Yes. It's like holding a heavy weight out in front of you. You can do it for a while, but eventually the muscle shakes. When you constantly force your prefrontal cortex to filter out an endless barrage of digital noise without ever giving it adequate time to recover, you develop a clinical condition.
Which the text calls DA, right?
Yes. Directed attention fatigue.
Or DFS,
No,
attention fatigue. But, the manifesto doesn't just describe DAF as being sleepy or needing a nap. It calls it an invisible neuroinflammation.
That's the scary part.
Yeah, that sounds a lot more severe than just needing a second cup of coffee.
It is entirely different from regular physical tiredness. When your brain is forced into a state of continuous strained vigilance, a catastrophic misinterpretation happens in the body.
What kind of misinterpretation?
Well, because we evolved in dangerous physical environments, our biological alarm systems are built for acute physical threats. The continuous barrage of stimuli, the emails, the doom scrolling, the notifications, triggers the exact same alarm.
Oh, no.
The body releases cortisol, the primary stress hormone. This locks your autonomic nervous system into a low-grade, perpetual fight-or-flight state.
This is the part that just completely blew my mind when I read it. The text points out that information, which, we historically viewed as a tool for empowerment and awareness, has literally transformed into a traumatic trigger.
It's a massive shift in how we interact with the world.
I mean, think about it. I'm sitting on my couch, perfectly safe, but my phone buzzes with a breaking news alert, and my biology reacts as if a predator just stepped into the room.
Your body doesn't know the difference.
The biological hardware cannot distinguish between a tiger in the jungle and a stressful push notification.
And that is the tragedy of our evolutionary mismatch. Your body responds to a smartphone notification with the same physiological cascade as a physical threat.
Like, what happens specifically?
Your heart rate variability drops, your digestion slows down, your pupils dilate slightly. You are preparing to run or fight.
Over an email.
Over an email. But there is nothing to fight and nowhere to run. You just sit there absorbing the cortisol. And the symptoms of this invisible neural inflammation are profound and pervasive.
Like, what are we looking for here?
Severe sleep disorders, generalized anxiety, emotional overreactions to incredibly minor inconveniences.
Oh, that explains so much.
And a complete inability to be present in the moment. We are chemically trapped in a loop of invisible terror.
I feel like I'm diagnosing myself as we speak. But if our biology is constantly screaming at us that we are in danger, how do we ever find relief? Surely the human body has a built-in mechanism to cool off the engine, right?
You would hope so.
There has to be a natural reset button.
There is a natural reset button, and it is beautifully designed. The problem is that the modern world has virtually eradicated our access to it. The source material refers to this as the tragic extinction of attention gaps.
Attention gaps.
Yes. In the past, before the era of total connectivity, human life was naturally punctuated by empty silences.
Like just doing nothing.
Basically, waiting for a bus without a screen, staring out the window of a train, sitting on a porch watching the rain.
Things we never do anymore.
Exactly. During these unstructured moments, when no external demands are being placed on your attention, a specific network in your brain activates. It's called the default mode network, or DMN.
Okay, I've heard of the default mode network in the context of daydreaming. Is that where our brain goes when it's wandering?
Precisely. But daydreaming isn't a waste of time. It is a critical biological maintenance cycle.
Oh, so it's doing work while we think it's resting.
Huge amounts of work.
Ugh.
When the DMN is active, your brain is doing the deep, necessary work of consolidating memories, processing complex emotions, integrating your sense of identity, and physically clearing out metabolic waste from the neurons.
Wow.
But the default mode network requires completely empty space and attention gap to function.
Oh, I see where this is going, because today, the absolute second We feel a hint of boredom the moment we are standing in line for coffee or waiting for an elevator. Out comes the phone.
Instantly.
We cannot tolerate a 5-second gap. We fill every single micro moment of silence with data.
And by systematically eliminating those attention gaps, we prevent the default mode network from ever booting up.
So the maintenance never happens.
The emotional processing never occurs. This brings us to a critical psychological concept detailed in the manifesto Attention Restoration Theory.
Okay, what does that theory suggest?
Developed by environmental psychologists, this theory posits that in order to escape total psychological collapse, an exhausted, inflamed psyche doesn't just need a nap. It demands spaces that require absolutely zero voluntary cognitive processing.
Zero processing.
None. It requires an environment that triggers what they call soft fascination.
What's the difference between soft fascination and just like regular focus?
Regular focus, directed attention is forced. You are telling your brain to look at a spreadsheet and ignore the noise. Soft fascination happens when an environment holds your attention naturally, without any effort and without demanding any interpretation.
Right. Where would we normally find that?
Traditionally, we found this in nature, watching waves crash on a beach or looking at a fire. You are engaged, but your prefrontal cortex is completely at rest.
But we don't live in the woods anymore.
No, we don't.
We live in a world suffocatingly dense with symbols, meaning, advertisements, and demands. So if our brain is literally inflaming itself trying to process all this meaning, what is the modern equivalent of soft fascination?
According to the text, the modern mind, in an act of sheer desperation, retreats into the concept of liminality.
Liminality.
Yes, the psyche actively seeks out the absolute experience of absence. If the natural world isn't available, we seek out empty, isolated, identityless digital environments that demand absolutely nothing from us.
We look for the void.
We look for the void.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the text doesn't just treat this as an abstract psychological concept. It maps perfectly onto our bizarre online behaviors.
It explains so much of what we do on the internet.
It really does. This is why you might find yourself mindlessly staring at a looped video of a blank wall on social media for 10 minutes, or why you might zone out in a transitional space like an airport terminal at 3 a.m., or a long, empty hotel hallway.
Exactly.
And instead of feeling bored, you actually feel this bizarre, profound sense of relief. Your inflamed brain is desperately seeking a space devoid of human signals.
It is the ultimate paradox of the modern mind. We are so utterly overwhelmed by connection, meaning, and presence that our primary biological defense mechanism has become a desperate plunge into nothingness.
It's wild.
We are hunting for spaces that ask absolutely nothing of us.
Okay, so we have established a crisis of the individual. Our working memory is shattered, our neuroplasticity is compromised, we are chemically inflamed by cortisol, and we are desperately seeking empty space just to survive.
Pretty grim picture.
Very, but the manifesto takes a massive leap here. It asks what happens when millions of isolated, exhausted minds, all suffering from this exact same directed attention fatigue, all seek out that exact same empty void online at the exact same time.
This is the pivotal moment in the source material. This is where we transition from individual biology to the architecture of the internet itself.
Okay, lay it on me.
To explain this monumental shift, the manifesto takes us back to the early 20th century, specifically to the foundational work of the Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung.
Ah, Jung. He's a heavyweight when it comes to the unconscious. He's the one who popularized the idea of the shadow, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Jung introduced a revolutionary concept called the classical unconscious, and more specifically, the collective unconscious.
The collective unconscious.
He theorized that beneath our personal memories, beneath the things that happened to you specifically in your lifetime, there is a deep, inherited reservoir of psychological structures.
Like inherited memories.
Kind of. This reservoir is shared by all human beings, universally, regardless of their culture, language, or geography.
So it's like a baseline psychological operating system that comes pre-installed in every human brain.
That's a perfect analogy.
And this is where his concept of archetypes comes in, right?
Yeah.
The universal characters and themes we all instinctively recognize.
Exactly. The shadow representing our repressed, darker instincts and societal taboos. The hero representing the struggle for self-actualization. The great mother, the trickster, the wise old man.
Right.
Jung argued that these archetypes were biologically encoded. They were a product of human evolutionary history. And traditionally, throughout the thousands of years of human civilization, This collective unconscious manifested itself very slowly.
Oh, so.
It bubbled up into our conscious world through ancient myths, religious rituals, art, and the universal symbolism found in our dreams.
I've always loved that concept because it explains so much. It's a brilliant framework for understanding why isolated cultures, like cultures separated by oceans that never even interacted, all told very similar stories.
Stories about massive floods or heroes descending into the underworld.
Yes. Or monsters hiding in the dark. It's because those fears and structures were already written in our DNA.
Exactly.
But the text is arguing that this biological model has changed.
Changed is an understatement. The text argues that we have entered the cyber age and a terrifying paradigm-shifting transformation has occurred.
Okay, I'm bracing myself.
This is where the architecture absolutely blows my mind. We are taking a biological concept that lived quietly in our DNA for millennia, and we are literally hardwiring it into server farms.
Wait, what?
The internet is no longer just a tool for sending emails or searching for recipes. It has structurally evolved into a tangible, distributed nervous system.
A nervous system.
Jung's abstract theoretical concept of the collective unconscious has now been physically mapped onto fiber optic cables, algorithms, and data centers.
So instead of our shared psychological heritage just residing deep in our brainstems, it's now living in the cloud.
Yes, and this migration creates what the text calls the virtual collective consciousness, or VCC.
The VCC.
And the implications are staggering. The human mind is no longer an isolated fortress. Your private internal world is now merely a vulnerable node within an uncontrollable, massive network.
This is where it gets scary.
Very. Because of this interconnected digital architecture, the boundaries between your individual private daydreams and the collective hallucinations of the masses have entirely dissolved.
They're just gone.
Gone. Millions of people who have zero prior connection to one another are now sharing identical fears, identical anxieties, and identical dreams.
Okay, I have to push back here because this sounds almost supernatural and I want to ground it.
That's fair. Let's ground it.
Servers aren't alive. Algorithms are just, extremely complex lines of code written by tech companies to maximize engagement. They aren't sentient.
No, they aren't.
So how can a network of cold cables and mathematical equations possibly hold, let alone actively influence our deeply human, emotional, collective unconscious?
It is the most critical question to ask, and it brings us to the core mechanism the manifesto describes. It is entirely mathematical.
Math.
Pure math. You are right, algorithms absolutely do not possess conscious awareness. They have never read Carl Jung, they don't know what a shadow archetype is, and they certainly don't feel human sorrow or existential dread.
Right.
However, what they do have is an unprecedented, almost godlike capacity for mathematical extraction.
Because they are watching, measuring, and recording absolutely everything we do.
Everything. They consume billions of unconscious micro-interactions every single day.
It's hard to even fathom that scale.
Let's look at how granular this is.
Yeah.
An algorithm measures the split-second pause as your thumb stops scrolling over an image of a dark room.
Wow.
It logs a midnight search query born out of insomnia and anxiety. It tracks the exact millisecond you choose to swipe away from a video that makes you feel a subtle sense of isolation.
It sees all of that.
To the algorithm, these aren't emotions. They are just data points, variations in engagement metrics. But collectively, when you aggregate billions of these unconscious pauses and clicks, they form a perfect mathematical map of human psychology.
So if I'm understanding this right, the algorithm is essentially a blind mirror.
A blind mirror, yeah.
It has absolutely no idea what it is reflecting. But because its sensors are so perfectly tuned to our micro-behaviors, it accurately captures our collective shadow, our shared exhaustion, our unspoken fears, and forces us to look right back at it.
A blind mirror is the perfect analogy.
Oh.
With ruthless statistical precision, these algorithms identify our hidden psychological patterns. They locate our universal human structures, our shared need for liminality, our desire for emptiness, and they package them.
They package them.
They feed them back to us as visual trends, viral aesthetics, and modern digital myths. The internet literally extracts your unconscious mind, processes it through a server, and serves it back to you on a feed.
And this isn't just about what kind of TikToks go viral, right? The source material highlights that this two-way street has gotten so deep and so invasive that it has actually rewritten human sleep architecture.
It has physically changed how we dream.
This is where we get back to the nightmares we talked about at the very beginning. The text explicitly mentions social media-related nightmares, or SMNS.
The clinical emergence of SMNS is perhaps the most concrete, terrifying proof that the virtual collective consciousness is real and active.
It's actually being documented.
Yes. Researchers are documenting that our modern digital anxieties are now actively blending with our ancient primal archetypal fears while we sleep.
What does that actually look like in practice? How does an algorithm change a dream?
Let's look at how an archetype evolves. In the past, a primal nightmare driven by the collective unconscious might involve being chased by a predator in the dark woods.
The classic monster dream.
Right. At its core, that is the archetypal fear of helplessness and loss of control.
Makes sense.
Today, under the heavy influence of the network, your brain translates that exact same archetypal fear of helplessness to the language of the technology you use.
Oh,
Instead of a predator in the woods, you dream that you are trying to scream for help, but you are trapped in an infinite digital loop. Or you dream that you are typing a desperate message, but your phone keeps deleting the words, leaving you entirely isolated in a void of communication.
wow. So the primal fear of the dark simply updates its software to become the fear of the black screen.
Exactly.
The primal fear of isolation becomes the nightmare of the zero engagement loop. That means the algorithm isn't just predicting what we want to buy or what political article will make us angry.
It's doing so much more than that.
It is literally scripting the narratives of our nightmares when we close our eyes.
Right.
It has infiltrated the most private layers of our mind.
And this infiltration is aggressive. The digital unconscious isn't just a passive storage unit. It actively injects these processed collective terrors back into us.
It's a loop.
We are trapped in a relentless feedback loop. The network learns our hidden fears by watching our thumbs, amplifies those fears by showing them to millions of others, and then returns them to us as viral content.
Which just keeps us stressed.
Exactly, ensuring we remain permanently locked in that state of hypervigilance and neuroinflammation we discussed earlier.
Okay, to make this incredibly tangible for everyone listening, I want to look at the specific phenomenological example the manifesto uses.
Let's do it.
Because I think this one example perfectly ties together everything we've talked about: the cognitive exhaustion, the biological need for empty space, and the algorithmic feedback loop. Let's talk about the specific viral phenomenon of liminal spaces online.
This is an absolutely perfect case study.
The text asks us to imagine a specific type of viral image that almost every single person listening to this has seen on their feed at some point.
Everyone has seen these.
It might be a picture of an endlessly long, empty hotel hallway with slightly outdated carpet.
Or an abandoned windowless shopping mall bathed in buzzing fluorescent light.
Yes. Or a sterile, empty swimming pool at night.
Right. And the defining characteristic of these images is what isn't in them.
Exactly. There are absolutely no people. There is no monster hiding in the corner. There is no blood, no overt narrative, and no obvious threat whatsoever.
It is just an empty transitional space.
A place you are meant to pass through, not a place you are meant to stay.
Exactly. And yet, when these specific types of images are circulated by the algorithms, millions of users across the globe report the exact same, highly specific emotional response.
Which is so weird.
It is. People report a shared sense of eerie familiarity, feeling like they have been there in a dream, coupled with a deep, melancholic isolation and, paradoxically, a strange, terrifying comfort.
Why does a low-resolution picture of an empty carpeted hallway make millions of completely unconnected people feel a terrifying comfort? Because structurally, it's just a photo of architecture.
The source material provides a brilliant analysis of this through the lens of Gestalt psychology.
Okay, remind me about Gestalt.
A core principle of Gestalt is that the human mind is fundamentally a meaning-making machine.
It wants patterns.
It constantly, obsessively tries to form meaningful wholes from ambiguous data. This is why we look at clouds and immediately see faces.
Right.
Or why we look at a constellation of stars and see a hundred.
There's no figure.
No figure at all.
There is no pattern.
Exactly. The environment in the image has been intentionally stripped of all meaning, identity, and narrative. There's no subject to focus on.
So what does the brain do?
When the brain attempts to process this, its cognitive machinery basically stumbles. It searches for a story and finds absolutely nothing to grasp. The manifesto refers to this specific cognitive stumble as the failure of presence.
The failure of presence. Because our overloaded brains, those exhausted prefrontal cortexes that are burning on cortisol from 35,000 micro-decisions, are finally given a space where there is literally nothing to filter, nothing to decipher, and nothing to decide.
Yes. And in that exact moment of suspension, when the mind encounters a total, eerie lack of narrative, the empty image transforms.
Into what?
It ceases to be just a photograph and becomes a psychological vessel. It acts as a blank canvas.
So if there's no story in a picture of an empty mall, my brain starts filling in the blanks, right? Almost like projecting my own current subconscious state onto the image.
That is exactly what happens. Because the image offers no external story, the human mind is forced to project its own internal state into the void.
And what is our internal state right now?
We project our suppressed traumas. We project our collective fear of loneliness, our profound cognitive exhaustion, and our deep, agonizing sense of alienation and loss of meaning in the hyper-connected modern world.
So the image feels eerie because you are looking at your own exhaustion reflected back at you.
Exactly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the internet in this scenario is acting as a massive global psychoanalytic catalyst.
It really is.
Think about the mechanics of this. You have millions of people sitting alone in their separate rooms, exhausted after a long day, all staring at their phones.
A very common scenario.
Right. They scroll past the same algorithmic feed of an empty hallway. The algorithm notices that they all pause for 1.2 seconds longer on that specific image.
Because of that mathematical extraction we talked about.
Yes, it aggregates that data, recognizes the archetypal pull of the void, and begins mass distributing it. In that moment, the internet takes the silent, isolated trauma of millions of individuals and translates it into a massive, uniform, collective experience.
It creates a literal shared hallucination of emptiness. It is the ultimate proof that the virtual collective consciousness is real and active.
The algorithm synchronized the suppressed anxiety of millions of users by offering them the exact psychological vessel they needed.
Which is a stark reminder that this phenomenon isn't just a quirky internet aesthetic.
No, it's not just a fun, creepy trend to scroll through on a Tuesday night. This is a biological and psychological cry for help from a fractured collective psyche.
We are flocking to these empty digital spaces because our real-world cognitive load is actively destroying us.
And our minds are demanding a retreat.
Precisely. And this brings us to the critical and, frankly, alarming conclusion of the manifesto. It deals with the consequences. What do we do next, now that we understand the architecture of this psychological crisis?
Right. So what does this all mean? We've diagnosed the physical exhaustion. We've stared into the algorithmic void. We know our very dreams are being co-opted. What is the ultimate implication of this psyche myth architecture the text talks about?
The primary warning in the text is about the supreme danger of dismissal. As you just said, modern society tends to treat the psychological pull toward the void, these shared digital nightmares and liminal aesthetics, as mere entertainment.
Just a meme.
Just a fleeting internet trend. The manifesto states that treating it as such is a fatal mistake.
Because ignoring a psychological symptom never actually makes it go away. It just drives it deeper into the shadow, right?
Exactly. In classical psychoanalytic theory, if unintegrated, suppressed material within the collective unconscious is ignored, it doesn't vanish. It festers.
It builds pressure.
It builds pressure, and eventually it erupts. The text warns that treating these shared digital anxieties as mere aesthetics leads inevitably to crippling individual neuroses and, ultimately, mass psychosis.
Mass psychosis. That is a heavy term. Because we aren't dealing with the root cause of why we are all feeling this way.
We are currently living in a state of psychological purgatory. The source describes our current situation as a crisis within psyche myth architecture.
Let me make sure I understand that. What does that mean?
Human beings desperately rely on symbols, myths, and overarching narratives to structure their reality and soothe their existential dread. We always have.
It's the dawn of time.
But the old symbols, the traditional narratives, religions, community structures, and societal milestones are collapsing.
They're buckling under the pressure.
They are buckling under the sheer weight of the hyper-connected 35,000 decision-a-day world. The old stories simply no longer soothe our modern exhaustion.
And the new symbols haven't fully formed yet. We are caught in the transition, so we are just floating in this agonizing in-between space.
That is exactly why we feel that paradoxical mix of fear and comfort in those empty digital hallways. Liminal spaces perfectly represent our psychological purgatory.
The comfort comes from the lack of demands our working memory gets a break.
Yes.
But the intense fear comes from the realization that we have lost our structural meaning. We are untethered.
So the text argues for the absolute necessity of dissection. We can't just keep mindlessly scrolling through the void, seeking soft fascination to numb our directed attention fatigue.
We can't just let the algorithms soothe us.
We must actively confront the terrifying allure of the emptiness. The manifesto uses a very specific psychological term here, individuation.
Individuate.
Individuation is the difficult, conscious, and sometimes painful process of integrating our hidden fears and recognizing our own shadow. We have to stop and ask ourselves why we are drawn to the emptiness.
We have to do the work.
We must dissect our own minds. We must understand how the network is influencing us in order to reclaim our individual human agency.
Because if we don't, if we refuse to look at the why.
If we refuse, the anxiety will not dissipate. The text describes it as a high-voltage current running constantly just beneath the surface of society.
That's a terrifying image.
If we do not actively heal our fragmented psyches and consciously engage with our fears, our individual identities will entirely dissolve into the amoral architecture of the algorithms.
We'll just be part of the machine.
We will cease to be individuals with free will and agency and become mere predictable nodes, blindly reacting to the nightmares the network decides to feed us.
Wow, this has been an incredibly intense journey today.
It really has.
We started by looking at the sheer biological exhaustion of trying to process 35,000 micro-decisions a day, how that working memory overload literally inflames our nervous system, drains our prefrontal cortex, and destroys our neuroplasticity.
The physical toll is immense.
It is, and we explored how the tragic extinction of our natural downtime forces us to seek out eerie, empty liminal spaces online just to give our brains a second of peace.
A desperate retreat.
And we unpacked the staggering reality that the internet has evolved into a virtual collective consciousness, where algorithms, acting as blind mirrors, mathematically extract our deepest archetypal fears and script the very nightmares we share while we sleep.
It represents a profound, permanent shift in what it means to be human. The boundary of the mind has expanded. We are no longer dreaming alone.
For everyone listening right now, I want to emphasize something crucial based on these sources. Your exhaustion is valid.
So valid.
When you feel that deep, paralyzing burnout at the end of the day, when you find yourself zoning out and staring into the digital void, I want you to know it is not a personal failing. You are not weak.
Not at all.
It is a documented biological reality of trying to navigate a machine-driven collective unconscious. Your brain is desperately trying to survive an environment it was never biologically built for.
And as we close this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative question to consider tonight before you close your eyes.
I'm ready.
If the algorithms have already mathematically mapped our shared anxieties and our digital shadows are already writing our collective dreams, what happens when the network decides what archetype humanity needs to experience next? Are your dreams tonight truly your own, or are they just a push notification to your unconscious?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We'll see you next time.